And welcome to the PTZ. That's a real fancy acronym for the Political Twilight Zone. I'm John Baldwin, and I'm here with Morgan Brittany.
Hello. Hi, John. It is nice to be in the zone with you.
Well, I was going to talk about your career, but if I did that, we'd be here for half an hour listening to all the things we're on. So I'm just going to say I am here with the not only famous, but the infamous Morgan Brittany. Because, as you know, she plays some diabolical characters on television. I mean, she killed Bobby Ewing. She made a dog disappear on the Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I know it. And that's only the beginning. I did Murder, She Wrote and was one of the prime suspects on Perry Mason. And I'm telling you, you talk about villain, that's me.
Yeah. Now, that episode of the Twilight Zone, Caesar and Me, that you did and we talked about this before, that was a good episode, but I'm telling you what, ventriloquist dummies just give me the heebie-jeebies. What was it like doing that episode?
You know, it was funny because I've been talking about that. We just did a whole thing of trading cards. This company had called those of us who are still around from the Twilight Zone days, and he was having us all sign these trading cards in a set. And so it brought back a whole lot of memories for me because I did 3 episodes, and the Caesar and Me was really fun for me. I mean, it was great to get to work with Jackie Cooper. And, of course, you know, the way they shoot it with the dummy, there's a guy off camera, and he's doing the voice. And then there's a guy underneath that's moving the mechanism to make his head turn and to open the jaw and all that kind of stuff. So it's not scary at all when you're doing it. It's just the fact that it takes all those people to put that all together. But that same dummy that they used in our episode was also used in a previous episode with Cliff Robertson.
Right.
So that they just kind of redressed him, but that's the way it was over at MGM in those days.
Yeah.
You know, we all used the same sound stage, the same sets, the same props. It was great.
Well, let's get started because we got a lot to talk about in the news and lots been happening. You know, the last couple of months, the coronavirus has just sucked all the oxygen out of the political room. So we'll start with that. What's the situation out in California with that right now?
Oh, it's terrible. We've got a Democrat governor, Gavin Newsom, and he is just determined to keep this state shut down. We really did not have a huge problem with the coronavirus. I mean, I think we have 40 million people living in the state of California, and there's 2,000 deaths. Maybe every death is bad and it's horrible, but, you know, the untold truth is that the numbers that were being given by the media are not the true numbers. They are combining numbers of COVID-19 with flu numbers and pneumonia numbers, and they're lumping them all together. I found a chart from the CDC website that basically shows it how they've lumped them all together, and then when you take out just verified COVID-19, the numbers are way down.
Wow.
So you see, John, this whole thing is just, there was no reason to shut down this entire country. And California, they are going to be determined that we are going to stay under lockdown as long as possible. I mean, it is ridiculous. We have drones yelling at us from the skies. It is like the Twilight Zone.
Really?
Seriously. Where if more than 3 or 4 people gather together on a sidewalk, or if they skateboard or whatever, and they get too close to each other, you'll hear a voice coming down from the sky saying, "Get away from each other, social distance." You know, I mean, it is ridiculous. It's like Orwell, 1984. Everything you could possibly imagine that was fiction is not fiction anymore. It's reality, and we're living it.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't, I thought recently I need to go back and read 1984 and just see, because I remember reading it, 30, 40 years ago, and
Yeah.
but I don't remember details of it and see how that fits with what's going on now.
I just reread it not too long ago, and seriously, you just shake your head and say, this was considered fiction back then. This is reality now. And I'll tell you, it frightens me. Out here in California, of course it's way different from where you are, but out here in California, we live in a hotbed of liberals and very hardcore Democrats, and conservatives and people like us are few and far between. We really are. And I have noticed how compliant these people are, these liberals. They are just, it frightens me because they are so willing to believe everything that's fed to them. They don't question anything. They hide in their houses. They don't. You should see them when they go to the supermarket. It's unbelievably ridiculous. It's almost like, they're in hazmat gear. It's absolutely insane. And yet, every single time you talk to one of them, they say, oh, well, people die. If you go out of the house, you're going to die. And I'm thinking to myself, what are you talking about? What are you listening to? But that's the whole agenda of the media, is to scare you to death. But in California, they're buying it. They're really buying it.
Wow. And it's funny how the left has gone from in the 60s to question everything to nowadays question nothing, believe everything you hear by the media.
Yeah, that is, and it's so frightening because you don't want to think that Americans are just, like sheep and will follow these people and believe everything they hear. I question everything, whether it comes from the right or comes from the left or comes from the middle. I question it. I look it up for myself and try to verify it and make sure it's true. But these people don't. And to talk to them, especially young people, the millennials, they're buying it all, hook, line, and sinker. You're talking about global warming, they're buying it all. The coronavirus, no, we have to stay in. No, if we go out, we'll die. We'll infect other people. I said, wait a second. No, that's not the truth. But, I'm a lone voice out here.
Yeah. And the other thing I think is interesting, it depends on what week it is. When this thing first started, for 3 years now, the media has been talking about how Trump is a dictator. He's like Hitler, blah, 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 And then, 3 weeks ago, they're like, the left is like, why isn't Trump arbitrarily just shutting down the whole country? I'm like, do they not see the hypocrisy of that?
Yep, I know it. Well, he is as smart as a whip, let me tell you. I don't know whether you saw my post on Politichicks about Donald Trump. I used the analogy of Brer Rabbit being thrown into the briar patch, and I said, he told everybody in the very beginning, he said, now I'm the president, I will take care of everything, I'll do everything, and then everybody's head exploded on the last of that. How dare he? No, the governors were saying, this is our states, we're the ones who are supposed to be in charge, and he's going, okay, fine, go ahead, be in charge. Because what he did, he got exactly what he wanted. Yes. Anything that goes wrong, it's on them. It's not going to be on him because he's going, I'm leaving it up to them. So basically, he outsmarts them every single time.
Right.
And it just makes me laugh because I sit back and I go, I just can't believe they're falling for it again.
Yeah, you would think after 3 years that they would be getting wise to it, but they don't because...
No, they don't.
Because they hate him. They hate him so much, though. Their anger is blinding them to logic. Yeah. A lot of them. And I know the latest thing he did that's got them all in a tizzy is saying that no president since Abraham Lincoln has received such a cruel, been such a cruel victim of the media. Well, that's just got them over the edge. I even read, this was hilarious. Somebody, I forget whose Twitter account it was, and they said, oh, well, Abraham Lincoln was the great unifier. And I'm like, what? Excuse me? I'm like, Abraham Lincoln's election was a catalyst for the Democratic Confederacy for leaving the Union.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And if he was such a great, unifier, why was he assassinated after the Civil War? I mean, I'm not knocking Lincoln. I'm just saying that was the most divisive time ever in this country. Well, I see where several states are starting to open up again, and lo and behold, I'm sure it's just a coincidence with this, that now they're saying that the coronavirus may have a second frontal attack on the country. That's just a coincidence, though, isn't it, Morgan?
Oh, of course it is. Here's the thing. They're looking at the numbers, and they're seeing that it didn't do the damage that they said it was going to do. Millions of people didn't die. It wasn't as bad as they thought. Yes, there were certain vulnerable people that did have other problems at the time, and that, and unfortunately, they died. But now they have to figure out, oh my gosh, they're going to open up this economy. Oh no, we can't let that happen. This economy has got to crash. Believe me, that's what they're thinking. And what are we going to do now? I know. It's a second wave. We can't take a risk of opening everything up because there's going to be a second wave, and it's going to be even worse than the first. Well, there you go again. It's the fear tactics. A lot of people are buying into it. I hear it already. But then there's other people that are going, wait a second. Didn't they say that about Ebola, that Ebola was going to kill millions of people in the United States, and I think it killed 30?
Yeah.
I mean, and the SARS, that was going to be really, really horrible, and all these things. Look at John, what they do whenever the weather changes. When a tornado is coming or a hurricane is coming, it's the end of the world,
right?
Isn't it?
Yes.
That's exactly what they do. Oh my gosh, worst storm of the century. Never seen anything like it. Well, after a while, those of us who have half a brain go, okay, this is ridiculous. I mean, really? Come on, people. But there's that group of people that will buy into it, and they believe everything. So, I don't know where we go from here.
Well, I think part of the problem is that people, and Rush Limbaugh he coined the phrase, that most people's memories start with the day they were born. And most people also do not commit to memory things that have happened in the past. So, I can, because meteorology, and I'm hoping probably not on this podcast, but on a future one, we can dive into the climate change / global warming. But it's about every 10 years they come out with this apocalyptic doom and gloom. We only have 10 years. They tried that in 1988. They tried it in 2000. They tried it in 2010. But people don't remember all those predictions and how utterly false they were. And people, they're saying now we have about 10 years. Well, in 2030, people aren't going to remember that AOC or Bernie Sanders said any of this stuff. But there'll be somebody else out there. It probably won't be them. What might be AOC, but that are doing it. And of course, the other day I saw that Al Gore, bless his heart, he's tying the coronavirus into global warming now. So I like that guy that Saturday Night Live, Tim, I wouldn't squander the surplus. I would put it in a lock box.
Oh, geez. Well, isn't it funny, though, John? You and I mean, I'm older than you are, but we've lived through so much. And people, I look at these veterans that are still around from World War II that have made it through all of this. Man, they are tougher than anybody today. They really are. And you think about what we lived through. We lived through the polio crisis, right? When all kids, we had to go and they had to find a vaccine for polio because it was so dangerous. And then TB, tuberculosis, and then we had other bad flus. They never shut down the economy, the entire country. Never. We had the Cuban Missile Crisis with John F. Kennedy when we were going to be blown away. I remember people had bomb shelters in their front yards. We survived it all. I think that's why you and I and a lot of people who are listening to this are so skeptical of all this.
Right.
It's like, come on, people. We can get through this. This is okay. It's a bad virus, but we've done it before. We've got great doctors. We've got great everything really going for us. We are the best country in the world, and you guys are folding like a cheap suit,
Yeah.
I mean, it's just pathetic.
You know what? I haven't heard Michael Moore tout the Cuban healthcare system. I thought for sure he'd be out there telling us if we all went to Cuba, we'd be cured of the coronavirus.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, where's he been?
So,
no kidding. Good thought. Yeah, where's he been? Pretty silent. Did you hear that thing? I was listening to, what was I listening to? Was it Rush or somebody talking about the New York Times was putting something out about the founding of this country was 1600 or something?
The 1619 Project.
Yes. I couldn't believe that.
Yeah. And I think they got a Pulitzer Prize for that, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly what he said. When the first slave ships came to America, this is what they're teaching our kids. And this is why, honestly, it's a blessing in disguise that our kids are being homeschooled right now.
Yeah.
We took them away from the indoctrination. I wonder if it's going to work. The schools are probably freaking out.
Yeah. So, another interesting topic that happened earlier in April, Dr. Fauci came out and made the statement, I forget which show he was on, that if Trump had listened to him earlier, that he might have been able to do more to stop the virus. So that kind of perked my ears up, and I think Rush talked about this too. So exactly what did Dr. Fauci say earlier in the year? So we're going to listen to a couple of clips from him. This first one is from towards the end of January when he was specifically asked about the coronavirus.
Bottom line, we don't have to worry about this one, right?
Well, obviously you need to take it seriously and do the kinds of things that the CDC and the Department of Homeland Security are doing. But this is not a major threat for the people in the United States, and this is not something that the citizens of the United States right now should be worried about.
And then in late February, he said this.
So, Dr. Fauci, it's Saturday morning in America. People are waking up right now with real concerns about this. They want to go to malls and movies, maybe the gym as well. Should we be changing our habits, and if so, how?
No, right now, at this moment, there is no need to change anything that you're doing on a day-by-day basis. Right now, the risk is still low, but this could change. I've said that many times, even on this program. You've got to watch out because although the risk is low now, you don't need to change anything you're doing.
Exactly what was Trump supposed to have done when he was getting advice from the team around him that it wasn't anything to worry about?
Yeah, that's really an interesting question because you're right. You're so right. Mixed signals coming in. My question is, and I'm going into the Twilight Zone here, but what is behind this? That's what I want to know. What is behind this? Because something inside of me is saying this is not right. This is not. Mm-hmm. This is not the way things should be. Shutting down an entire economy overnight. Mixed signals, just like you said, coming from the medical experts. I mean, I don't know what the goal is. I don't know who's pulling the strings. I don't know. And it's driving me crazy because it's just not sitting right with me.
Yeah. I think part of it, too, is the copycat mentality. I know was it Illinois was the first state, either Illinois or Ohio was the first state to start shutting down. And I knew when I saw that other states would copy that. I think we're talking about even some Republican governors like Mike DeWine and DeSantis in Florida. I think part of it, I think they are so afraid of what the New York Times is going to say about them that a lot of Republicans, I mean, let's face it, Trump is one of the few Republicans that actually has a backbone and will stand up to these people. So I think that's part of it. But yeah, to me, it was so crazy because there was no middle ground. It was like everything was open and everything was shut.
And if you think about it, just a mere 2 months ago, we were riding high. I mean, the unemployment numbers were so low. The stock market was at an all-time high. People had great, hope for the future. Everything was rolling along. Trade agreements were being made, all this kind of stuff. Nothing could have been better. And then the rug is pulled out from under you like that. It's almost like they couldn't get Donald Trump on any of the other stuff that they tried on him with Russia, with Ukraine. They couldn't do anything.
Right.
And maybe this was their last, they took advantage. It's like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a good crisis go to waste.
Exactly.
Maybe they jumped on it and said, we got our chance now, man. We shut this whole thing down. But then, of course, Europe, it affected the entire world. It's not just us.
Right.
I mean, the entire world collapsed, really.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just too bizarre.
But, it's like everything else they do, it boomerangs on them because Trump is like made of Teflon, and he's given, they played right into his hands, though, in a certain way. Trump can use the exact same slogan he used in 2016, make America great again. The economy's crashed. How many presidents get a chance to rebuild the economy twice? Trump's going to have an opportunity to do that and we can talk more about this later, but I really don't see anybody from the Democratic side defeating him in the election. So he's got this plays right into his hands again, and they just don't realize that. But the other thing that's interesting, Trump did actually do something back in January. He stopped the air travel from China. He was called a racist and a homophobe. What was going on in January? What was it that was happening?
I know what it was.
That the Democrats were focused on. It wasn't the
What were
coronavirus.
they focused on? Adam Schiff and all those people. They could have cared less about China, what China was doing.
Yep.
They were too busy trying to get Trump out of office.
Yeah. So, Trump actually did do something back then. And I like what he's done, because most of the stuff he's done is he's tried to have the reaction be a market-based reaction.
I think he's smart enough. I think Trump is smart enough to know exactly what to do. And he's got good people around him with financial minds that know how to make this thing work. I think they're a little, they're not positive that if this doesn't open up pretty soon, if the economy doesn't open up, there will be a tipping point that's reached. And I think he wants to avoid that at all costs, because one of the biggest fears, I think, is getting the timid people that are scared to death, that have been absolutely terrified that they think they're going to die if they leave the house, to try to get them back into a restaurant, to try to get them on an airplane. You know what I mean? Because this constant bombarding of us every single day, every time I turn on the television, there's some kind of an ad from a company. Wash your hands. Let's social distance. Let's make sure we're all safe. Let's not go out and take risks. I'm so sick and tired of being treated like a 3-year-old that I'm about ready to die. It's like, don't do this to me. Don't talk. I know what to do, okay?
Right.
And yet they are just, it's like subliminal messaging all the time. All the time. This is dangerous. You're going to die from this. You could kill somebody else if you go out without a mask. I mean, that's realistically what they're saying. So my fear is we have got to get Americans to trust again, to go out and say, it's going to be fine to go to a restaurant. It's going to be fine to go sit with your friends. It's going to be fine to go to the theater,
Right.
But if they work, this is what the media is doing. They're working against us. They want us to stay in. And it's just really scary. And Trump's he's got a tightrope to walk here because he's got to get this thing open.
I think another thing you mentioned, tipping point. I've read bits and pieces here and there where some areas of the country are suffering a meat shortage because a lot of these meat packing plants are shutting down because of the coronavirus. You talk about a full-scale riot on our hands. If the stores don't get meat and other food products, then you really will have a serious problem on your hands.
Oh, yeah. And here we go, John. Here's another thought. How'd you like to be out in California where they're releasing all the prisoners? They're releasing murderers and serial killers and sex offenders into the public to save them, supposedly to save them from getting coronavirus in prison. They're letting them go. Now, what kind of an idiot would do that?
Right.
This is what scares me because you're absolutely right. If our food supply chain gets disrupted and there's nothing there or there's a lack and people start panicking, what do you think that's going to do? And if we've got criminals on the streets, what do you think they're going to do? I mean, I heard this morning that one of the sex offenders that they just let go last week, he's already back in prison because he's already gone after some woman. He's already attacked someone. So, brilliance, huh?
Well, we haven't talked about the election, and that's amazing because we're only, almost 6 months from, tomorrow?
Yeah, I think so.
We've got Joe Biden out there. And
Somewhere,
yeah.
Basement somewhere.
I don't know if he even knows where he is, but
know it.
But the only thing I've really seen about him the last week is these accusations coming from Tara Reid, and that's been interesting to watch because there's been a split on the left. Some people are trying to just cover it over, and other people are saying no, we really do need to have this thing investigated. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, everybody knows it's kind of like Harvey Weinstein. Everybody in Hollywood knew who Harvey Weinstein was and what he was doing. Actresses knew that if he said, come up to my hotel room, you know what to expect. Everybody knew it. But nobody did anything about it. It's the same thing with Joe. How many times have we seen him nuzzle a woman's hair or grab her around the waist or get up to a little child and smell her shampoo in her hair? Whatever it is, it's creepy. It's weird. Yeah. He's just that kind of a person. I'm sorry. He could have done some, whatever he's done in government, if he's done, I don't even know what he's done that's been that, particularly great.
Right.
But if this woman, and she's a Democrat, if she comes out and makes an accusation, at least they should treat her the same way that they treated Ballsy Ford with Kavanaugh. They should give her her day in court. They should give her her testimony, let her come out, confront him. But no, it's a double standard. We can't do that. She doesn't know what she's talking about. This never happened. It never happened. It's a Bill Clinton all over again.
Would that be the same Blasey Ford who couldn't remember when, where, how, what, or in that kind of... Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
none of her friends could corroborate the story.
And this woman has got, people that she told, and plus her mother called into Larry King Live and told the story. So,
yeah.
Come on. Really? It's just so frustrating to me. And you know what it's done? It's blown that Me Too movement just out of the water because they've become just hypocrites.
Yes. And do you think that they're actually going to go through with it and have Biden be the nominee, or do you think they're going to put somebody else in there at the last minute?
Man, if I was betting on it, I would say he's not going to be the nominee. I would. Unless they want him to be the nominee and lose, and they figure, 4 more years of Trump, he'll get us out of this, whatever. I don't know. it depends on who he pick or who they pick for him as a running mate, because that will be the person pretty much who will be, behind everything. Because Joe can't. I mean, everybody knows it. We all know it. We've seen it. The man, if you look at it in one way, I'm not a big fan of his at all, but I feel bad for him. I do. When he's up there and he loses his train of thought and he doesn't know where he is, or he walks off the stage, or he looks around and he calls his wife his sister, or it's sad, and it hurts me because I think, who is behind putting him out there?
See,
the man should not be out there. It's cruel.
See, you brought up another point I've thought about. Biden wasn't even anywhere close to winning until the South Carolina primary. Something happened over that one weekend that all of a sudden Biden was the front runner. He won South Carolina. Boom, he's winning all these other races. Now, it's actually voters that are deciding this, but I wonder, leading into that, the media started propping him up, and so that just became a self-fulfilling prophecy. I think some polls came out today showing Biden beating Trump nationally in some other states. I don't believe them. But if the Democrats,
really, in whose universe? Here we are. We're back in the Twilight Zone.
Yeah. But if the Democrats believe that, they may just leave him in there.
How can they? I mean, they're not that stupid to know that this man can't make a decision for what to eat for breakfast. I mean, he just can't. You're going to throw the entire economy and the virus and China and all this into Joe Biden's lap in January?
Yeah.
Are they that crazy? Are they that deranged under, with their hatred for Donald Trump, that they would do something like that?
Unless they figure that having Biden in there increases their chances of keeping the House. That's one aspect, because if Bernie Sanders had been the nominee, socialism would have been on the ticket. They'll hide that easily with Biden. So I think that's part of the factor. But yeah, I agree. It's if he ends up being the nominee, I don't expect there to be any debates, one at the most, because Trump will just obliterate him.
They can't afford it, John. They can't. And the other thing is, look at the baggage this man has. All the Republicans have to do is talk about China and Ukraine and the money and the this, and I mean, they'll hammer that home over the next 6 months. I mean, the distraction is the coronavirus right now, and that's taken the heat off of Joe, because he would have been demolished by now if this virus hadn't hit.
That's true.
Because they can't afford to put him out on the trail. They can't.
Yeah, it'll be like Hillary Clinton all over again, because she didn't go out on the trail. It wasn't because they didn't want her out there. She physically wasn't able to do it because she was sick.
Exactly. Unless they pair him with somebody, which you can't look at an Elizabeth Warren, you can't look at any of those other people that were running. You just can't. But somebody like a Michelle Obama, if they pull her out, is a possibility, right? Maybe a possibility that she has a following and people like her in the Democrat Party. I don't know.
Oh, by the way, I'm not to change the subject. Marianne Williamson is still in the race. I just read that today. She's still out there. She hasn't dropped out of the race.
Oh my gosh! There's a chance. I cannot believe how weak the Democrats are. I mean, if you really think about it, you look at their lineup that they had as potential presidential people, that they just weak all the way around.
I love the Saturday Night Live skit where they had Cory Booker, and the moderator said, "Cory, would you like to leave now to beat the traffic?" "Yes, I would."
Yeah. And the other thing too that I think a lot of people are seeing in the Democrat Party is that they don't stand for anything. Mm-hmm. They go with the wind. If something, it's just like this. This Joe Biden thing they were all, the woman must be heard. Mm-hmm. She must be able to speak, the woman is always right. And now you ask those same people those same questions, and it's like, well, no, I back Joe Biden. I believe him. I don't believe her. So I think a lot of the independents and a lot of the people that are kind of, didn't vote for Trump, but would think about it now, I think they're going to look at the Democrat Party and say, you people don't stand for anything. You really don't. You don't have any kind of, value system that you follow. And it's getting worse and worse.
Yeah.
It really is. Look at Pelosi. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. I think somebody's controlling her, though, because I don't think she actually, she said last year, I think she really did not want to go down the impeachment road, but she was forced to.
Yeah, I know she was.
And you notice...
Far left. Yeah.
And you notice Chuck Schumer doesn't say a whole lot anymore. I think, because I remember when Trump was first elected, there were some issues that Schumer, I think infrastructure was one. Schumer said, I look forward because there are a couple issues that Trump and I can work together on. And then within a week, he came out and said, no, we're not going to work with him on anything. So apparently somebody took him to the woodshed and said, no, we're not doing this.
Yeah, and that's my question, though. Who is that? Who is behind this stuff?
Well, if it was 20 years ago, I would say the Clintons, but they're not relevant anymore. I don't know.
Too, that really, that just frustrates the heck out of me, is that all of this stuff with the deep state and all this with the FBI and all of this corruption and the coup they were trying to take Trump out, all this evidence is out there, the documents are out there, and yet nobody's moving on anything. It's like, where's Lindsey Graham? I thought he was going to bring all these people up in front of committee. I thought heads were going to roll. You know what I mean? Yeah,
there is something out there. I did see, it's been a week or two now, where William Barr was in some interview. I forget who he was on with. It might have been Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham. And I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was basically that there was an attempt by the deep state to sabotage Trump, and it was very concerning to him. The way he said it is not something that's easy to walk back. And he also said that he did expect that there would be indictments being handed down by John Durham. So we'll have to see on that. That's been very quiet, and actually that's probably a good thing, so these people can do their work in anonymity right now. And I'm not going to hold my breath that a lot of stuff's going to come out from it, but it would be nice to see people like James Clapper and James Comey get their comeuppance on this.
And Brennan.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%, because if we have no trust in our intelligence agencies and the FBI and the CIA and all these people, if we lose trust, that's really bad for this country. Really bad for this country. And I'm hoping, I'm hanging on to William Barr here, that he's going to do the right thing. And that's another thing that I think is going to, that is really motivating the Democrats to try to win as much as they can in 2020. Right. Because if they become the majority in the House, or even grab back the Senate, maybe not the presidency, but they'll stop everything. Right. They will stop in its tracks everything, and all that stuff will go away. People have to understand that. Voters have to know how important this is, because that will go right out the window.
Well, that was the plan in the beginning. Hillary Clinton was going to win in 2016, and none of this stuff would have ever reached the surface. It would have been buried.
That's right. 100%.
I did read Joe Biden, I don't know if you caught it or not, did write an op-ed, and I just want to read a few quotes from this because I think it's kind of funny. I believe that the moral obligation of our time is to rebuild our economy in a way that finally brings everyone along. Correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't Joe Biden in an administration for 8 years where he could have affected something like that?
Yeah, I think he was.
I mean, and where's he been for the last 3 years? It was working for everybody. African American and Hispanic unemployment rates were at historic lows. So, and then this is my favorite one. This is not a new priority for me. Tackling systemic racism and fighting for civil rights is what brought me to public service as a local councilman in the years just after Dr. King's death, and has been a driving force throughout my career ever since. I was proud to fight against discriminatory school district funding and housing practices in my own community as a young man, and prouder still of the work I did in the U.S. Senate co-sponsoring the Civil Rights Act of 1990 to protect against employment discrimination, unless, of course, you just happen to be a conservative black man that wants to go on the Supreme Court, and, let's just throw everything but the kitchen sink at the man. And if people don't know what I'm talking about, go look up Clarence-Thomas, because Joe Biden was at the center of that. Wasn't he was he the majority leader in the Senate then, or of the Judicial Senate Committee?
I think he was.
Yeah, and he went after Clarence-Thomas with a vengeance. And also, somebody brought up, and I don't know this because I was too young to remember then, but they said that there are statements that Joe Biden made back in the 60s where he opposed desegregation and busing desegregation. So what he just said there in that quote is not true.
No, and you're right. Somebody else wrote it for him. And who was it? I forget who it was that said every decision Joe Biden's ever made has been wrong.
That's right. That might have been Trump.
I forget who it was that said that, but you look at his track record in his career. That's why he never got beyond anything when he's wanted to run for president. He never got very far because people, what has he ever done? So, that's why this is just so sad and pathetic that.
When Obama ran, he said, "Oh, we finally have a clean, articulate black man running," as if that was something unusual.
Exactly.
And he also did he make some comment about Indians working at 7-Eleven or something like that?
You have to have a slight Indian accent.
Yeah.
To work there. Yeah.
Well,
I know. It's, and of course but then again, they give all that a pass, the Democrats.
Yeah.
If it was a Republican, they'd be out, gone, history.
Well, here's a trivia question for you, and you probably know this, but I'm going to throw it out there, and I'll come back and answer it in a few minutes. Joe Biden talked about the Civil Rights Act of 1990, or co-sponsoring it to keep it in place. To our audience, when was the first Civil Rights Act in this country passed? And hint, it wasn't in the 1990s. It wasn't even in the 1950s. No. Do you know when it was?
It was the 60s, 60-something, right?
Yeah, but not the 1960s.
Probably 18.
Yes. If you read, Dinesh D'Souza covered this in one of his books. The first Civil Rights Act was done in I think, either 1865 or 1866, immediately after the end of the Civil War. The Republicans in the Union passed a civil rights legislation, and, of course, it was never enforced in the South. As a matter of fact, that law was the catalyst for the Democrats in the South forming the KKK to terrorize people to keep that law from having any effect.
That's right.
And that's when all that started. So,
yep.
And then later, Eisenhower proposed a civil rights legislation in 1958. It was rejected by the Democratic-controlled Congress. And, of course, it wouldn't have passed in the 60s without Republican support. If anybody wants to read the true history of racism in this country, I strongly suggest Dinesh D'Souza's book. I can't remember which one. It was one about Hillary, but I think it went into the whole history of racism and how it's mostly, not all, but...
Yeah, it was. I think that was the one about her, because I went to see that movie. It was really good. That you're right, and you think about all the Democrats that have held high office in the Senate and the House, and you're looking at Robert Byrd, right?
Oh yeah.
And you've got Al Gore's father, and I mean we're talking. They want to just forget that ever happened. Oh no, we don't. That never happened. And they want to rewrite history, but they're very successful at doing it, and they hope people forget.
Well, that's because
short memory.
Republicans let them do it. I remember during the 92 debate, when Jack Kemp was debating Al Gore, and Gore said, "Well, Mr. Kemp, you're not a racist like your fellow Republicans." And Jack Kemp, instead of refuting that, said, "Thank you," and moved on. And I'm like, You spineless wimp. You can't even, I knew the election was lost at that point,
Yeah, I know it.
So that's just ridiculous. The Republicans have let them do it. Not Republican voters, but Republican politicians.
No, you're right. And I'll tell you, over the past 3 years, I've seen some really fine young Republicans emerge that I'm extremely happy to see, that are speaking out, that are standing up, that are not buckling under. It gives me hope, because for a while under Obama and even they were just coasting along, going along with everything. And I was really giving up on the party. Like, this is they do nothing. They do nothing. They don't fight for anything. They just go there and pick up their check, and that's it.
Right.
But now I'm starting to see, in Florida, in Jim Jordan, a lot of these guys that are really fighting for the truth. And it seems like they've really got our best interests at heart. But, I don't know, you're so right. They just, a lot of times, they just buckle under and just get steamrolled.
Okay, so there's a feature I want to do on our podcast. Where would we be without the Hollywood left letting us know how they feel on all the issues and, telling us how we should react? There was first I got to start with this, and I wish I had it in front of me. Pat Sajak, who apparently is not a liberal.
No, he's not.
Put a thing out the other day, and I'm going to try to read it as close to, he said, you have to understand how hard a time this is for us celebrities who are used to being pampered by the public. Now we have to spend time closed up in our own homes like everybody else. Please adopt a celebrity. So I was perusing Twitter last night, which really is like getting down in the sewer. That icon of music, the Cher, she's never shies from speaking up on Twitter and putting everything in all caps. On her Twitter page at the very top, it's like, you have a little description of yourself, and Cher says this. It says, "Stand and be counted, or sit and be nothing. Don't litter, chew gum, walk past homeless people without smile." I guess she means with smile at them. Doesn't matter in 5 years. It doesn't matter if there's only love and fear. Well, my question is, if you're walking past the homeless, what, you're just going to smile at them and keep walking? I'm pretty sure Cher has a little bit of money socked away somewhere. Why don't you help get these people off the street?
No. They can mouth off, and that's what they do to get attention. But when it comes to opening up her Malibu mansion with all of its extra rooms, she's not going to invite a homeless person over to stay there.
Yeah.
She won't. No, and neither will Barbara Streisand with her 7 guest houses that sit empty with air conditioning running all year.
Oh, that
no.
I never will forget that. In the summer of 2000, when they had that brownout in California, and Barbara Streisand said that everybody should keep their thermostat at like 80 degrees so that they cut back on the air conditioning. And somebody asked her publicist, well, is she going to do that? Oh, no, she's not going to do that. But everybody else should. And the other thing I think about, this, I can't do this. I will try not to laugh. But when the Katrina hit and all that flooding was going on, and you had those people looting the DVDs and the TVs, and Celine Dion said that let those people touch those things for once. Don't let them actually have them. Let them touch them for once. And I'm like, well, why don't we just bring those people to your house and let them touch everything in your house?
Exactly. It is the most frustrating thing. But honestly, I've gotten to the point on here where I just laugh at these people because they're such jokes. And they're just, they live in their own little bubble. All they care about is taking selfies. I don't know how. I know what I wanted to tell you.
Okay.
Guess what they just reopened and is an essential. It's an essential business to open in Los Angeles. Plastic surgery. I knew I wanted to tell you, and you know why? because after 6 weeks, your Botox starts running out. So you've got to get new injections.
Well, it's hilarious, but it makes perfectly logical sense.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yes, but that is so funny. Oh my goodness! I did want to tell you this. I didn't want to end the show without the podcast because I know you're going to want to run out and get this. Elisa Milano has a new book out.
I can hardly wait.
It's called "Sorry Not Sorry." So, and she tweeted, and this is a very innocuous tweet, but I'm sure the rest of the world will be glad to hear this. She says, "I ate Cheez-Its for dinner for the 3rd time this week." My God, what the celebrities are having to go through with this virus.
Tragic, isn't it?
Well,
seriously, I don't. It defies belief. It really does. And I never thought I'd be living in an upside down world, but that's what this is. And these people, they're just. I don't know where they're from, and I don't know how they get that way, because I've been in the business for over 50 years, and thank goodness I didn't become one of them. But it's crazy. It literally is crazy.
Well, that's a question I was going to ask you. I mean, because you were in the business, how did you avoid becoming a liberal like that?
I think it's because I had to be self-sufficient from the age of 5.
Okay.
I was put into the workforce. I learned work ethic from a very, very early age, worked my way through, made a good career, and then had the bottom drop out when I became an adult, had to pull myself up from nothing and start over. And I realized what life was. I didn't live in a fantasy land anymore, you know, and I had a very strong faith, and whenever I was questioning anything or had a hard decision to make when it came to Hollywood, I would always pray, and I would always ask for help, and I got it. And so I've never really had I've never fallen to temptation of what Hollywood offers that can destroy you. Because if you let them, they will own you. And you give everything up for fame, they own you. And I never wanted that. If I was going to do it and be successful, I was going to do it on my own terms. And it took me a lot longer, a lot more years than most people. But I went out one door, went in another, went out another door, went in another, until I finally did it. So that's why I didn't become a liberal. And I don't know. I think it was just, divine guidance for me.
Right, protection from the Lord, so to speak.
Yeah, really it was. And I have a lot of stories about that, about decisions I had to make. And, tough times, really tough times.
And you mentioned earlier, these women and men too, but mostly women since we're talking about the Me Too movement, they wanted those careers so badly, they were willing to put up with the Harvey Weinsteins and these other people doing those horrible things. And the thing that I think that makes me the most angry about that is that the women who went through that didn't bother to do anything about it. So the ones coming behind them, the Ashley Judds, the Lisa Milanos, they act upset about it. Well, where were you when they were doing, because, they had to know they weren't just doing it to them. It was a systemic problem. Where were they trying to put a stop to it then? And then when it comes to light, I'm totally against this,
Sure.
And I'm not saying they're not victims. I mean, I'm sorry that happened to them. I'm sure it was traumatic. But like you said, they made the decision that they wanted to be a star come hell or high water.
That's right. And, I knew because I had the same thing. Harvey Weinstein, I met him at the Cannes Film Festival, and he made the same proposition. And I said, no. I said, you want to talk? We'll talk here.
Yeah.
I'm not going up to your room. And all of a sudden, his whole attitude changed, and it was like, well, maybe we'll do it some other time. Well, I knew. These other women knew too. They knew, but they did it. And they did it over and over again. And I mean, some of them would write him emails afterwards. This is how really sick it is. Oh, Harvey, darling, I remember. I had such a wonderful time. Well, that kind of blows their story out of the water.
Oh, wow.
But they want fame so badly. They want to win an Academy Award so badly. They will do anything it takes. And that's why I'm saying it owns you, and they own you. And Harvey could have done anything to these women.
Right.
And it's for them to come back 30 years later on some of these men, these other men. Hey, listen, I was in New York City. If you watch the TV show Mad Men, I lived that life. I knew what sexual harassment was. Right. But you dealt with it. You walked out the door. If anybody got a little too serious, you called them out on it and said, no, sorry, and you left. But the problem is, these women, I didn't know. Yes, you did. I'm sorry, but you did.
Right.
So, I try to tell, if I do seminars for young actors, I tell them the truth. And I tell them what to expect. And I said, it's your decision, but you have to know that this is what it is. And you either be true to yourself and you say, I'm not doing that, then you have to stay true and walk out that door. And it's hard, man. It's hard when you know that somebody there is offering you a starring role in a movie and you're a starving actor waiting for a break. Do you know how hard it is to walk away from that?
I can imagine.
When you've spent years and years training and taking acting classes and going on auditions, and you finally get into a room with a producer that can make you a star as long as you do something for him, it's hard to turn around and go, sorry, buddy, see ya.
Well,
but you have to.
Well, our time's about up. I did want to end it with I got to throw a Dallas reference in here. When I watch the left and their attempt to get Trump, it's like watching Cliff Barnes trying to get JR. He fails every time. So that's what the left is doing. It's like, I always felt sorry for him.
Yes, that is so true. That is such a good comparison. It is, and boy, I don't know, that show, there's a lot of stories to that show for future episodes, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, and one thing I forgot to do at the beginning was to have you tell folks where they can find you online, because you are the co-owner of Politichicks. So tell us a little bit about Politichicks.
Politichicks we have a blog and website, and we talk about the current events of the day, and then we have a Facebook page where you can interact with us every day. We do speeches all across the country. We do fundraising for candidates, and we're just as active as we can be, which we've been shut down for right now, but when election season cranks up, we'll be out there really getting people motivated for the get out to vote, and make sure that, no shenanigans go on, because this mail-in voting thing they're trying to pass is not going to be good. We got to talk about that next time.
Yes,
Google and Facebook and all of this harvesting of voters. Yeah, big subject.
Well, that'll do it for this episode of the PTZ, the Political Twilight Zone, with Morgan, Brittany, and John Baldwin. And we'll see you. We're hoping to do this once a month at least to start with. So check back with us in early June, where we'll have updates, and we definitely have to talk about the vote-in mail-in, and also just to whet people's appetite, talk about Event 201. Have you heard about that?
No, I haven't. I'm anxious.
Okay, well, I'll save that for next time. This is John Baldwin.
And Morgan Brittany.
And good night, everybody.